So I'll start with introducing myself. So for those of you I haven't met, my name is Holly Kinnis. I'm a conservation analyst at the Mistaki Institute. I've been working on the Beaver project for about just over 7 years now. I'm joined by my colleague Nilo Sinatambi, and then our partners from Cows and Fish, who is Carrie O'Shaughnessy and Amy McLeod, who are co-authors on the Alberta Beaver Beneficial Management Practices. So first, I'd like to begin today's meeting with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering in this space from all across the beautiful province of Alberta. There's a few people from BC, a few people from the States as well, I believe. So here in Alberta, on these lands, we're on the traditional lands of many Indigenous people, including my peoples who are from the Métis Nation of Alberta. So the Mistaki Institute's office is located in Mohkinstsis, which is Calgary. We're in Treaty 7 territory, which are the ancestral and the traditional lands of the Niitsitapi, so the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Kainai, the Piikani, the Iyarhi Nakota, which includes the Chiniki, the Bears Paw, and the Goodstoney First Nations, as well as Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Calgary Elbow Métis District within the Battle River Territory. So like I said, many of us are joining from across Alberta, which of course is also comprised of Treaty 6 in the Central Lands and Treaty 8 to the north. And we recognize and acknowledge the First Peoples and the many different First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived here and cared for these lands since time immemorial. So just a few little pieces of housekeeping here. So this webinar is being recorded. It's going to be posted on our YouTube channel so it can be shared afterwards. The chat has been disabled. We had a lot of interest in the webinar. So to keep things a little more organized, we decided to disable the chat. But if you are having technical issues, you still have the ability to contact the hosts or the panelists through the chat. So let us know if you can't hear things or you can't see the question and answer. So we have enabled the question and answer function. If that's new to you, it should be in your Zoom control panel. There's like a Q&A portion, and there you can ask questions to us. You can also view all the other questions that have been asked, and you can upvote questions that you also have. And we'll be doing our best to try to answer all of those live during the question and answer period. With regards to those questions, we're trying to keep them very high level about the beaver management practices. So there might be some circumstances that maybe you want some more information on, a specific case, and we encourage you to reach out to us after that, and we can give you some more specific input for that situation. But feel free to answer or to ask your questions in the Q&A function. So our agenda today is pretty straightforward. So there were a lot of unknown names in the registration list for the webinar, which I love to see. So I wanted to start today with a little bit of who we are. So who is working with beavers, kind of how we got started, what we do. Then we're going to shift right into sharing with you the draft Alberta Beaver Beneficial Management Practices. Really rolls off the tongue. So I'm probably going to just call it the BMPs from now on. Then we're going to get to your questions or the question answer period. And following that, what we're going to do is we're going to share the links to the BMPs with you all and encourage you to explore it on your own time. And then we are asking for your feedback in an online survey afterwards. So we'll share all those links with you when the time is right so that you don't sneak out and start getting your homework done early. Although I'm sure some of you have probably found it on the website already. So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about working with beavers. So our beaver project began in 2012, working with Cows and Fish and the Ann and Sandy Cross Conservation Area, which some of you are, I'm sure, familiar with, just south of Calgary here. And that was specifically on a beaver restoration project. So that kind of opened the floodgates, if you will, for beaver work that has kind of taken off exponentially ever since. So from that work, we quickly learned of local land managers' desires for coexistence, and specifically solutions where they could coexist, but also manage some of the challenges that beavers can pose. So today our project is called Working with Beavers. It's had kind of several different names and different iterations over the years. It's a partnership project between the core team, which is the Mistaki Institute, and then Cows and Fish, the Riparian Management Society. And then we also have local partners with Blood Tribe Land Management and Piikani Nation Lands Department, which we're working with them on several different beaver pieces with. So our main goal of working with beavers is to foster coexistence with beavers so that we can really see their ecological and watershed benefits on the landscape. So we do this in a large variety of different ways. I'll kind of highlight some of the different things that we do. But most of our work falls into the three categories, which is like increasing knowledge and awareness of and participation in activities that restore and sustain our water functions. So we kind of look at this as our like outreach and education type component. We provide training for the implementation of coexistence tools. If you don't know what a coexistence tool is, you will learn a little bit about them more today. And then also I'll show you where you can find even more about them on our website. And then the third kind of facet of our Beaver project is researching new tools and new beneficial practices to continually keep evolving our community of practice that we're trying to build here with beaver coexistence. So like I said, this is an example of some of our training that we offer. So we host workshops where participants learn how to properly install coexistence tools, such as a culvert protector you'll see here in the photo on the far left, and pond levelers, which is kind of the bottom photo. And those can both help to mitigate flooding that can be caused by beavers. And then kind of the right photo there and the background on some of our slides is an example of a demonstration site tour. So when a lot of these tools are installed, there's opportunities to go back to the sites and kind of discuss what had happened there, how well the tool is working, what sort of maintenance is required, and that sort of thing. We also create various types of awareness materials, like I had mentioned. So some of these can be fact sheets. This one here, for example, is a cost-benefit fact sheet. They're all based on scientific research, and then we kind of make it into a more digestible format. And so these are great because you can also print them out from our website. So if you want to start kind of building that case, especially I think we have a lot of municipalities on our call here today, we have a lot of tools that can kind of help promote coexisting with beavers, not only from an ecological perspective, but also from a cost management perspective as well. A good example of this too is we've also developed a cost calculator. So this was kind of developed with municipalities in mind, but other landowners can of course use it too. When you count in, time needed to remove a dam or fix some of these like flooding challenges that might happen. So basically you can input all your information and it'll tell you how quickly a pond leveler is going to pay for itself. So pretty conservatively, we calculate out that pond leveler pays for itself usually within a month or two, especially if you have, a crew of 2 people going out to clear a culvert weekly. So I spoke a little bit about, one of the other facets that we have in the project, specifically research focus. So not only do we monitor all the coexistence tools that we install or hear about, we also undertake like new techniques being used in Alberta. They're not new elsewhere, but they're kind of new here in Alberta. So one of them is a beaver dam analog. So a beaver dam analog, or a BDA, is a habitat management tool. It mimics a naturally occurring beaver dam. And the main purpose of the use of this is for stream restoration, water storage, and to encourage beavers to come back to the site and resume their normal activities for the benefit of the stream system, basically. So the photo here was a BDA that we installed in partnership with Blood Tribe Land Management in 2022. you can tell it's not holding much water at the moment. It's a slightly ephemeral stream, but when spring runoff comes, it really helps to capture that water, so it can kind of like soak into the ground and dissipate instead of just flying through this area. Another example of some of the research that we've been undertaking with our Beaver project is beavers from space. So it's a great name. I love that name. I didn't come up with it, so I can say it's a great name. You know, that would be a little self-serving if I said it was a great name. But last year we launched Beavers from Space. So this was a citizen science initiative asking volunteers to search satellite imagery of the blood reserve and surrounding areas, looking for beaver dams and lodges. So we were overwhelmed by the amount of interest here. So within 5 weeks, we had over 30,000 images classified. And each of those images, just for like reference, each of those images was reviewed by 7 different people. So we're talking like hundreds of thousands of classifications were completed in 5 weeks' time. We're now analyzing the results of this data, which should be released sometime this spring. And we had over 1,900 volunteers in this program. And the beauty of citizen science is that it can also, not only does it meet our research questions, but it also meets our goals for engagement and education. We had a lot of great questions on the benefits of beavers and how to look for beavers on the landscape and that sort of thing. And then just highlighting some of the other pieces that are maybe not as well known about what our Beaver Collaborative does is we will undertake literature reviews. We've done a social science survey, which if you sign up for our mailing list, we will be launching the survey again. It's been about 5 years, so we want to test the waters again of how beaver management and our education pieces have kind of been pushing the dial on the beaver management discussion in Alberta. So we'll be sending out a repeat of that survey in the next year or so. And we have done other various research that can be found on our website, which I would like to take a few minutes now and kind of walk through the website with you guys. So I will leave this page. This is where it gets worrisome. It's like, can you still see the right screen? Okay, so Nilo, maybe you can just confirm for me. Can you see Working with Beaver's website?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. I'm assuming everyone else can too. If you can't, let us know in the chat. So this is our website. Welcome. We did a big redesign on this webpage, so some of you might be familiar with previous iterations of this, but this is our knowledge hub, where we like to share a lot of the information that we have for you on beavers. So this is the landing page. It's what it looks like. Talks a little bit about, the project, why we think beavers are so important, especially in the face of climate change. We all, we can share information about how they attenuate flood peaks, how they can help us store water during droughts, and then, of course, how they can provide habitat for a lot of endangered species and other wildlife species as well. So I'm just going to kind of go over some of our main tabs here. If you're looking for something in a hurry, the best place to go on here is probably the Resources tab. So this is where we like to keep a lot of our different resources organized here. You'll find them kind of duplicated in other places of the website as well, but this is really a place that you can come if you're looking for something specific. So we had some of the reports that I had mentioned are now up on the website here. This is one way that you can get to the beaver beneficial management practices. I'll show you another way in a second. We've had some media pieces, symposium materials. For those of you that joined us in July, we had a symposium in Nisku this past year, Central Alberta. And so we posted all the presentations there, even from previous years of symposiums as well. So the resources page is really a great place to start if you're looking for something specific or if you're just browsing around. If you're looking to build the case of, why do we care about beavers? What makes them so great? Our beaver benefits page is a good place to start. It can take a second to load usually. We'll just give it a minute here. There we go. And this is where we have a lot of our fact sheets and kind of like really digestible awareness materials that we've created. And then we have some videos as well. Again, trying to have a few different types of media out there to really reach diverse audiences. But what most of you are probably interested in today is our coexistence column. So the Beaver BMPs are right at the top. You can also just click on the coexistence page, and that'll take you to all the different tools that we have information on. So I'll come back to the Beaver BMPs. It's our first item on here. But if you are curious, what's a pond leveler? We have a section for that. There's a page built specifically for that. We also talk about culvert protectors, tree wrapping, BDAs, textural repellent. So that was a sand and paint mixture. And we did some research on that. So our findings are there. We have a map of different Beaver coexistence tools, which you can also add your coexistence tools to. So if your municipality has added tools, like let's say you've put in a pond leveler, we would love to see it on our map. And you can share photos of that on there as well, and then let us know if it was successful or if it failed, because those are all really important things for us to know, so that we can build and grow as a community of practice. And then the cost calculator that I had mentioned before in my presentation. So really a wealth of information. But since we're here, I think it's, without further ado, time to launch the Alberta Beaver BMPs. This is something that our collaborative has been working on pretty much since the start of our project. We definitely saw a need for something like this, and we're hoping to continue to build on it. It is a bit of a living document, and as we learn more about the uses and the lessons learned with some of these tools and how to do them well, to mitigate the challenges with beavers, we're going to continually update this document. So you can get to it either by clicking on this beautiful tiny decision tree or on read more. So let's just open it up here. Okay, so you'll land here. It's a bit of an introduction page. I won't read through this with you, but I will highlight some important things. So this decision tree is super important. This will help you make decisions and explore different tools to deal with some beaver challenges. So I'll walk you through it. But first I want to point out some really important resources that we have looked at when we were developing our BMPs. So a lot of them are beaver management plans. So that's kind of like taking BMPs a step further as well. And those are usually pretty specific for municipalities, or for like, usually a group or an organization will build one for a specific area. So our BMPs can kind of be a starting point where you could then go and build beaver management plans. So let's focus on the tree a little bit here first. And if you're wondering, oh my gosh, I need my glasses, it's kind of tiny. One trick with this, we tried to keep it as concise as possible, but it is a little hard to see. So one trick is that if you Control+ on your screen, or it's probably Apple key plus, I would imagine, on a Mac, you can kind of zoom in and out, and it's way easier to read, and it will still function as well for you. So this tree links to our PDF document that are the Beaver BMPs. So I'm going to just show you what that looks like in a second, and then I'm going to walk you through the tree here. So let's just say, you come to this tree, you're not sure what you're looking at. One thing I really want to point out is that anything with the plus sign is clickable, and it will take you to the PDF of the BMP document. So I'm going to click on it now, just to show you what it looks like. So see, it took me right to that section, but I'll start at the top. So we have the decision tree, which is interactive, and then it takes you to this PDF that's online, and it'll hopefully take you to the section that you need to get to based on the decision tree. But if you just wanted to open up the document itself, that works completely fine too. So you'll see here in the document, the table of contents, of course, our acknowledgements of our funders who've supported us in this work. We have another mini version of the tree, which kind of serves as our introduction, and then we get right into the meat of it. So I'm going to go back to the tree where we are now so we can kind of discuss the meat of it. So I'm going to walk you through this. So you always start on the left. So you want to know, are beavers present at this site? Yes or no? So let's say, no, they're not present there. It says, okay, well, would you like to plan for beaver presence in the future? It's like, oh, okay, maybe I've never considered that before. So let's say yes. So then you can explore a variety of proactive management approaches. And there's whole sections, a whole section devoted to proactive management approaches, but it just kind of, it doesn't skim over them, but it introduces the concept. It's not quite as in depth as what we have for our reactive management approaches. And you'll notice that in the document. And why we decided to do that is because in Alberta, I think we're very much so, and I don't just think, like I know that we are very much so in a reactive management state right now with beavers. That's where we get, like as a collaborative, having done this for over 10 years, that's where we get almost all of our questions are, you know, a beaver's flooding my road, what do I do? What are some options? I maybe don't want to trap it. That might be the only option. You know, what are some things I can explore? So we started with reactive management approaches, knowing that one day maybe we can build up some of these proactive management approaches as well. So they're in there for you to explore, but not in as much detail as the reactive management approaches. So let's just say, let's look at a hypothetical situation here. Like I said, beavers are plugging a culvert and they're flooding a road. So you'd start here. Are beavers present at the site? Yes. Are beavers causing challenges? It's like, well, at this site, I would say yes, but maybe there's other sites where they aren't causing challenges. So of course you'd say no, take no action, and monitor for any change. It's like, okay, keep an eye on them, but maybe you don't have to do any conflict resolution. In this case, let's say beavers are flooding someone's driveway, they can't access their house. So I'd say, yes, they're causing a challenge. Are the challenges tolerable? No, you have to address that flooding so they can get to their house. So then we're going to explore these reactive management techniques. So we're looking at flooding. So there are a few different approaches to that. And the beauty of this tool is that despite it being a little confusing as a decision tree, we're hoping that you can see some clear paths here. So with flooding, there's kind of long-term solutions and there's short-term solutions. So the short-term solutions would be something like removing the dam, you know, notching the dam, taking out a portion of it. Some people even use explosives like removal of the dam, however you may do it. And then that's usually paired with beaver removal as well, because if you don't remove the beavers, then they could come back and rebuild that dam. And that typically looks either like relocation or lethal removal. So if you wanted more information on any of those, you would click on it and it'll take you right to that part of the report. It takes a second, like a split second to get to that part of the report. But here we are. So you can see when it takes you to that section, you can still scroll up, see the other sections. But what we're looking at here is we have some introductory photos. So what does that look like? And in these photos, volunteers and staff are actually notching a beaver dam. And they're notching it prior to installation of a pond leveler in this first photo. So we always start with some photos, a short description of what the tool is, and then we launch right into the advantages of the tool, both from an environmental standpoint and then a social standpoint, and then the disadvantages of using the tool, both environmental and social disadvantages. So given our years of expertise and what we've seen and what we've heard from others, we've kind of developed these, you know, common advantages or disadvantages that we've seen over the years. And then come the BMPs themselves, so the beneficial management practices. So if you're going to use that tool, what's the best possible way to do it so that it is successful, so that it is safe. You know, there's a lot of lessons learned that we're pulling from in the States or elsewhere that some of these tools have been used for decades now. So there's a lot of great information on beneficial management practices on how to use these tools well, and maybe they're not right for every situation. We then have a short section that's a summary of the regulatory considerations. So it lists the various acts that we are aware of that probably are required for the use of that tool. And I say probably because there is still a little bit of a gray area in knowing for sure how some of these tools and the legislation relates to them. So we've done our best to kind of summarize what we've experienced over the years and put it into the section. So this is just a summary here. And then of course some resources if you want more information on that particular tool. So I'm going to go back a section here. We're going to come back to our tree. So flooding. We're back to our situation. We're flooding the driveway. We want a more long-term solution and a solution that can keep beavers in place. So let's say we want to put in a pond leveler. So I'm going to click on that section in a second, but I just want to recognize that with any of these tools, you'll notice our nice green boxes. We always want to make sure it's maintained and it's monitored. So with any of these tools and with beavers, like we're dealing with living, working systems and things change over time. Flows change, there's debris. And so any of these tools require maintenance and monitoring. So let's say, okay, I want to install Pond Leveler. You click on Pond Leveler. You give it a split second to get to the page. And again, it'll take you right to the introduction, which is a few photos of what a pond leveler looks like, what it can look like. This is a combination culvert protector pond leveler. So they can look quite different depending on the site. And then again, advantages, disadvantages, and then the detailed BMPs here. So some examples are like some design considerations, you know, using a double wall pipe instead of a single wall pipe. This was a nice photo here of a single wall that a beaver decided to chew through because he could hear the running water, whereas the double wall seems to kind of reduce the sound of the running water and reducing the desire of the beaver to plug that. But what I want to show you here is the summary of the regulatory considerations. So like I said, we list the various acts here. If you click on this link, it'll take you right to the bottom of the document, or I guess middle of the document, where we have our regulations section. So like I said, we've done our best to kind of summarize our experiences of what is typically required for installation and use of some of these tools. We go through the various different provincial and federal legislation. And then we do have a summary table below. Let's just see. Here it is. Okay, so the summary table here, you can kind of see like what legislation might apply to which beaver management tool. That being said, we always are recommending that before you start a project, you always need to speak with your regulatory authority, whether that's provincial, federal, both. Some municipalities might have bylaws. If you're working on a First Nation reservation or a Métis settlement, they also have usually their own set of rules and regulations that you need to adhere to. So you need to make sure that you check all that before you start the process of installation or gathering supplies. That always needs to be your first step here. So I think that covers kind of like the main meat of our decision tree and our BMP document. What I do want to show you is, and maybe I'll show it to you in the table of contents here. So we've tried to look at the most common reactive management tools. So that's dam notching, pond levelers, culvert protectors. They might have various names, which we've also tried to include in the document, like beaver deceivers and beaver bafflers. There's a variety of different trademark names. Supplemental feeding and dam building material. tree protection, relocation, lethal removal, either by trapping or hunting. We then move to the regulatory section, which I just went over, and then of course the proactive management section. So I'll just kind of show you what that looks like right here. So like I said, it's kind of an introduction of some of these proactive management approaches. And if there's a desire to have more information on these, this is something that we can kind of like build into some updates. I'm just checking my time here. Looks like we're good. So yeah, I'll just kind of scroll through this here. Compensation programs for allowing coexistence. Some adaptive management processes can be built into the decision tree. So if you check out some of the other resources and links for some of those beaver management plans, they've done that. Beaver management zones, so like allowing areas where you coexist and maybe areas where there's no tolerance for whatever reason. And then of course our beaver dam analogs, which I've talked a little bit before. And then we have our reference list here. So we really tried to streamline it just for easy reading, but we do have all our references here, you know, to back up where we're coming from. It's not just based on us and our experiences. There's a lot of science and research that backs these BMPs. So with that, I think what I'm going to do, let's get my PowerPoint up again. And actually, maybe I'll just stop sharing my screen and we can go right into question and answer period. So if you guys have questions, be sure to put them in the question and answer function. I see that there is one question here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen as soon as I can control. There we go. And I'm going to ask my partners, Amy and Carrie, to join me, who co-authored this report with me. And we'll be available to answer any questions that you guys might have kind of on the BMPs. I know I just talked at you for 35 minutes and I apologize for that. And I just gave you a lot of information, but we would like to answer any questions that you might have right off the bat, and then we'll send you off to kind of explore it on your own.
So the one question that came up was from Kirby, and it was before you shared the PDF. So I'm not sure if this question is still, if it still holds, but he wanted to know if it's possible to download the decision tree as a PDF. So I don't know if he's interested in that as like its own standalone product.
Yeah, so yes and no. So the PDF is on page 5 of the report. And so you can actually, you know, when you download the PDF of the report, you can blow that up and use it that way. We wanted to try to kind of keep the interactive, but also have it like a print ready version as well. So yes.
Okay, how about I read this question out loud, and then I'm not sure who wants to take it, but so this is from Susanna Bruno. I find it ironic that it is okay to kill the beavers, but way harder to just relocate the beavers. Really speaks to out-of-date societal norms. Is there any movement on making it easier to do in-stream work for pond levelers, that is Water Act approvals, etc., or for relocation? When we are promoting these options for landowners or municipalities, it is hard when there is a lot of regs for them.
Great question, Susanna. I think I'll maybe throw that over to Carrie and Amy, see if you guys want to take a stab at it first.
Okay, I guess I will start, and maybe afterwards, like if I miss anything specifically, Holly, on like the humaneness of relocating beavers, or Carrie, you can jump in there because I think you're a little bit more experienced with that side of things. But on that, I will say in general, what you often see with regulations is a lag behind the demand, right? So in my experience doing this work for not that long, only about 5 years now, I will say that it appears it is getting a little bit easier in that regulators are now more aware of these tools. I think at the start of doing this work, things like pond levelers, BDAs that Holly mentioned, they're fairly unknown. So when something like that comes to a regulator, they don't necessarily even know how to treat it. Now I think it's becoming a little bit more common practice to see these things coming across desks. As far as relocating beaver, I agree it's still a challenge because there are permits required to do so. Some of that has to do with humaneness in moving a beaver so that it's being put into appropriate habitat. Beaver are territorial, so you want to make sure you're not putting it into another beaver's territory and causing problems there, which can be just as cruel as trapping or killing the beaver. And there's also issues with disease transmission too. So making sure if you're moving an animal into a new ecosystem that you're not bringing with it a suite of diseases that are unfamiliar to that system. So on that end, again, I'll let Carrie and if I'm missing the pond levelers piece. There are some now documents that aren't publicly available yet that regulators have for things like what's often referred to as a drain pipe. We call it a pond leveler. So if there is interest in that, I would say definitely reach out to your local approvals office, particularly under the Water Act, and see if those can be made available to you. And then on the federal level, there's the code of practice for removing dams. Again, that also applies to things like dam notching, or in some cases, if it's not critical habitat or fish bearing, that can also apply to putting a pond leveler in, meaning that you don't actually need a Water Act or federal approval for that in those certain situations. So a lot of this is documented throughout the BMP document that Holly talked about in that regulatory section. It is still pretty complex because often you're dealing with complex layers of regulations. So in-stream, automatically, you're triggering into things like Water Act. And then, if you have fish present, depending on the fish, if they're species at risk, then you have the Species at Risk Act. Any fish present, you have the Fisheries Act. So again, it depends on the situation. If you're in a place where you have at-risk species and you're working in the water, unfortunately, you do have to go through all of the hoops. You got to jump through them all. So, yeah, Holly, Carrie, anything to add there?
No, I think you covered it well, Amy. I think really it's an evolving discussion and conversation that as a collaborative we've been trying to have with our regulatory partners, and definitely awareness and understanding of what the tools are about, and that they're not suitable in every situation either, is a big learning curve for everybody. And so it's coming along. And from the relocation piece, again, Amy touched on all the reasons why right now that's a difficult thing to do. And again, further discussions, are there easier ways to do these things? And if not, then what are the processes in order to follow them through to be within compliance?
Yeah, that was great. I think you guys both covered that, so I won't add anything to that. Nilo, I see some questions are coming in, so keep them coming, guys. We'll try to answer as many as we can. We have about 10 more minutes for questions. And if we don't get to them, you can follow up with us after. I'll put up my email address as well. So what's the next one, Nilo?
Okay, it's from Rob Gardner. In the dry mixed grass region that I live in, many ranchers do not realize that beaver can and did live in all regions of Alberta. How can we explain these opportunities to more landowners? So I don't know if that's one you want to tackle today or another way if we want to focus on BMPs. So I'll let you.
Yeah, I can tackle that one briefly. I do think that that kind of falls under our education and extension type work. And we do offer a lot of different presentations on beavers all across the province. So I think that that's kind of one of those pieces that falls within that, you know, that we can and we try to kind of reach all these different regions, because you're right, a lot of landowners, beavers have been absent from the landscape for so long. And just back to the history of the fur trade, like we reduced beaver populations by almost 90 to 95% across North America. So people today just are not aware sometimes that beavers were once everywhere across this landscape, including mixed grass regions. They were, you know, coast to coast, basically, across North America. So that's one of those things that we do look for, those opportunities to reach those landowners as well through some of our education and extension.
All right, great. Our next question comes from Dave Klopaki. If a group wanted beaver on public lands like East Kananaskis, we could wait for beaver to come along. What are other alternatives for obtaining relocated beavers?
That is a good question. It's a question we get quite a bit. You know, we've actually started an internal spreadsheet, a matchmaking spreadsheet, where we write down the name and contact information. And then if we do ever hear of beavers in need of a home, then in those odd cases, we can reach out to you. Right now, and the first question kind of got at this, like right now, relocation isn't something that's easily done in the province of Alberta. You can wait for beavers to come along. Sometimes people will consider installing beaver dam analogs to kind of increase the value of the habitat in hopes that beaver will move into that area and kind of like take it over. So unfortunately, I can't really offer you many good solutions. I don't know, Carrie or Amy, if you have anything to add to that. No, I know. I wish I had a better solution for you, Dave, but it's a little more challenging at this time for beaver relocation. So maybe we'll move on to the next. Oh,
yeah,
Carrie.
I guess the only thing I was just going to add is, you know, is just explore the proactive management section of the document. And if it's not helpful or you have some feedback on, you know, more information you would like there, then include that in your feedback.
All right, great. Our next question comes from Emma Berry. Our staff from working with Beaver is available to collaborate with ENGOs and or community organizations to co-host Beaver awareness experiences for the public out on the land.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do a lot of work. I highlighted like some of our local partners that we've worked with, but we do a lot of work, various different components. So whether it's like training, putting in coexistence tools, or if it's bringing, you know, we do Cows and Fish leads Living with Beavers workshops, which are in-person half or full day workshops, and then even down to like lunch and learn webinars. So we offer kind of a full suite of different education and outreach opportunities. But if we're looking specifically for experiences with the public out on the land, we can absolutely do kind of like demonstration site tours or discussions around beavers on the landscape as well. And we work with a variety of different municipalities and NGO partners and various communities.
And just to add to that, Holly, that can include even, you know, going out to a site and looking for beaver sign. You know, what would a beaver habitat look like? Are there signs of them here? So those would be maybe some additional sort of tour type activities that could be incorporated.
Yeah, absolutely.
But absolutely call, and we'll work to work with you to get that done.
So we just have one more question on the list here. So if anyone else has some questions they want to drop into the question and answer, you should do that now. Oh, here's another one, but we'll start with Lavina Morton. I'm curious to know more about the textural repellents. Has that been found to be effective? Do you know if it is commercially available? So I know, again, this is a little bit away from the BMPs, but since we have a bit of time here, you can answer it if you want, Holly.
Sure. Yeah. That seems to be like a little tidbit that everyone always grabs onto, and they're like, yeah, texture repellent. So I would encourage you to go on our website and kind of like read the section on the research that we did with the textural repellent. But just to kind of summarize it, what we did find, so we did a small pilot study. We were looking to expand the study, but what we did find is that we actually had a very hard time finding a paint that didn't have titanium dioxide in it. And titanium dioxide can have some potential toxic effects on beavers. If a beaver were to eat, you know, we did the math, it's in our report, but if a beaver were to eat like a fully painted tree, they were to eat 2 of them, it could potentially lead to some negative health impacts on the beaver. And so for that reason, we decided we didn't want to recommend the use of that tool. The whole purpose of the tool is that hopefully, you know, if the beaver tries to eat the paint in the sand and is repelled and doesn't try to eat the tree. But until we find kind of a better alternative to the paint situation, we are hoping to kind of explore some non-toxic glues and things like that coming up, but it's not really an approach that we can recommend right now, just because of that impact there. So more to come on that hopefully in the next year.
All
So
right.
I was gonna say we probably have time just for a couple more here.
Okay, they're starting to roll in now.
Of course.
So I'll go to the next question from John Degania. Considering various issues and the options for resolution and the complex regulatory framework, is there consideration for professional guidance of projects, that is RP bios?
I'm just rereading that again. I have to wrap my head around it, unless Amy and Carrie, you want to jump in on that.
I mean, if I'm interpreting that correctly, I think they're asking, like, you know, recommending that people use professionals to get through the complicated regulatory framework. Is that correct? Maybe if the person that asked the question wants to clarify.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I read it as well. And I mean, like we have P-bios on our project as well. And I feel like it hasn't kind of changed our regulatory procedures going through the process.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I would say that too, because we've had, you know, varying complexities of projects, and in some cases used a consultant that, you know, a firm that does the regulatory piece, you know, as part of ongoing projects. And, you know, even for them, we've had to work quite closely to try to see where they fit in a regulatory framework. Sometimes there's not the right box to check on these application forms that fit the types of projects. So again, I think just to reiterate, I think it'll be an evolving regulatory framework that sort of fits to the demand of projects like this that are, you know, a little bit more about working, you know, with nature versus, you know, just the eradication of the beaver to begin with. I think right now there is more of a demand, right, to keep the water on the landscape. People want to keep the beaver ponds, but at the same time to prevent some of those issues with infrastructure.
So I'm not sure if we answered that, John. Maybe the best way to deal with this is if we didn't, maybe you could follow up with an email, just because we're running a bit short on time here. Angie's question is, when will the timeline for the BMP feedback be, Holly?
Well, that is actually a good question to kind of transition us into our next steps here. So if we didn't get to your questions, and I see a few are, you know, comments and feedback. So I would encourage you to put that in our feedback survey, which I'm just about to link to right now. So I'm going to move us on to that now here. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, put my question and answers. But the deadline for feedback is Feb 21st. I will put this all up on the screen for you guys here. Share. Can I still see you? Everyone can see my screen now. Carrie, Amy, since you're the only two I can see. Perfect. Okay. And then of course I lost my note slide. Here we go. Here we go. So the online survey. So what I want to encourage everyone to do is, and Nilo, maybe you can put the link in the chat to the BMP page. So it'll take you to that decision tree page. And then of course it links to the PDF. So if you guys could explore the BMPs, we really want to know your feedback. Your feedback's really important to us. You are the users of this BMP document. We've developed it for you. So if there's a way that we can improve it, we would like to hear about it. We are capturing that feedback in an online survey, and we're doing that instead of an open dialogue right now, because we really want you to take the time to kind of like work through those BMPs, mull it over, think about your own particular situations, and then fill out the survey. So please be sure to review the BMPs, the decision tree, and the document, and then you can take the online survey. The online survey is quick and painless, I promise. It's through SurveyMonkey. It is 10 questions. It will take you at most 5 minutes to complete. I think most people will probably do it in 2 or 3 minutes. And the deadline for that survey is February 21st. The information gathered during the survey is completely anonymous. And if you do have any questions or concerns, that is my email address. Please reach out, and either I will forward it to Carrie or Amy or myself. But please let me know if you do have any questions or concerns about the survey. So the link will be in the chat to both the BMPs and the survey. And then also we're going to follow up with an email tomorrow to all webinar registrants with those 2 links. So before we conclude today, I'd just like to thank our current funders. So we're funded by the Alberta government's Watershed Resiliency and Restoration Program, as well as Alberta Innovates, the Calgary Foundation, and the Alberta Eco Trust Foundation, many of whom have been long-term funders of our Beaver work. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We really had stellar attendance. I was really impressed with the diversity of the groups that were attending here today and the number of people that were here. I think it does really speak to the need for a document like this, and we do really hope that you find it useful, and we would love to hear your feedback. So if you have any other questions or would like to follow up, if I didn't answer your question today, please follow up with an email, and I'd be more than happy to give you a call. And I think we'll let you all go on that note.